Hello. Thank you for coming and welcome. My name is Carlos Sanchez, and I'm here to talk to you about Kubernetes and continuous integration, continuous delivery. So a little bit about me. I work at CloudBees, a company that sponsors a lot of the Jenkins development. And we are working on cloud-native Jenkins, which is how to run Jenkins in Kubernetes in a cloud architecture and building the next generation Jenkins and CI/CD engine. My background is being a lot of years working on open source, working on Apache Maven and Eclipse Foundation, Apache Foundation, and other projects. And I'm also a Google Cloud expert talking about Kubernetes and Google Cloud and Google Cloud, Google Kubernetes Engine, and things like that. So let's start with some questions for you. Hopefully you are awake still. And who is using Kubernetes today? Keep your hand up if you are still using it in production. All right, some people. Who is using Jenkins? Almost everybody. Who is using Jenkins with Kubernetes? OK, some people. All right. I'm also the author of the Kubernetes plugin for Jenkins, and I'll be showing some of that work here. Who likes slides? Nobody. OK, that's good, because this is the only slide I have. So let's start talking about JenkinsX, which is a new project that was started this year under the Jenkins umbrella, which is a solution to run Jenkins and CI/CD on Kubernetes. So being a more opinionated, more native solution for Kubernetes. Who's using JenkinsX today? If anybody? Nobody. Maybe that will change after this talk. So with JenkinsX, I'm going to show you a demo, and hopefully you'll get some of the benefits of JenkinsX. So you have an application running, deployed on Kubernetes, right? I have release 0033. I have my commit ID and a few things. So it's called the Croc Hunter. This is a demo done by some people at Microsoft, and it's killing crocodiles with lasers. What could be cooler than that, right? But let's say environmentalists see this and they're like, this is not very nice, to use lasers to kill crocodiles. So let's make a small change in our application. So this is an application that is on GitHub. It's a Go application. I'll show you the code. Can you see this? The font size is good for you? Yeah? So it's a very dummy Go application that is just compiled, packaged in a Docker container, and deployed into Kubernetes as a Helm chart. And I'll be going into the different details. But first, let's show you a demo. Let's say I want to make a change here. I want to change this file, and I'm using a different JavaScript. So I'm going to say git checkout -p no lasers. And I'm going to do a commit here and say no lasers. And so I'm going to push this upstream. And I'm going to do a thing is pull request. I never remember exactly what's the correct syntax. And I'm creating a pull request in GitHub with my changes, right? So if I go to GitHub, again, pull requests, I have a new pull request with my changes. It says no lasers, OK? So what's happening behind the scenes is now JenkinsX has been notified of this change, and is doing a build. So if I'm going to the Jenkins instance, if I can find it, which is Jenkins, this one. And at some point, you'll start seeing notifications coming in GitHub. It's just the amount of time it takes for them to come. OK, so here it is. Some checks haven't completed yet. I can go and just click on the details, and it takes me to the same Jenkins page. And I can see the pipeline that is doing the build of my Go project, is doing the build of my Docker image, and it's doing a deployment, a make preview. So there it is. Something is still happening. Hasn't finished yet. So what's happening behind the scenes, Jenkins has the concept of environments. And if I go to the command line again, I say Jenkins X get environments. You will see that I have a staging environment, I have a production environment, and I have some other things, but bear with me for a second. So these environments follow the GitOps practices. These environments are GitHub repositories themselves, and they define which projects are deployed in my different environments. This translates into Kubernetes into different namespaces. So you have a namespace for development, for staging, one namespace for production. And it's all defined in a Git, in files inside the Git. So I can track at any time and see what versions of what applications are deployed in each environment. So if I go to the staging environment, GitHub repository, I can see in the requirements, I see the applications that I have deployed. And you'll see in a second how this evolves as soon as I start deploying applications. So hopefully my Jenkins build finished. Oh, still not. It's running a Selenium test now on my pull request. And I'll show you. I can go to the code, and I can show you the Jenkins file that is building this application. So if you look at the steps, well, just finished. I'm doing a checkout of the Git and the container Go. So this is using a multi-container pod to do the build. So I have a container that has the Go build binaries, and then I have other containers that do different things. So in the container Go, I'm doing a few things like make and create a preview environment that I'll show you in a second. Then I have another stage that is running Selenium tests. And these tests executed in parallel across multiple containers. So it's running Selenium tests on Firefox. It's running Selenium tests on Chrome. And it's aggregating these parallel results. And this should show here. So it's building my application. It's running the Chrome test. It's running the Firefox test. And because this is a pull request, it's not doing a build release or a promotion to environments. So what this translates to on the GitHub side is in this comment from Jenkins. Jenkins is telling me this PR has been built, and I have created a preview environment for it. So I can go to that preview environment, and I can see that the version of the release is PR20, which is the number of my PR, and the commit ID, that should be the commit I pushed to that PR and that branch. So when I click, I can see that my changes have made its way into this preview environment. So I'm not throwing lasers, but I'm throwing fish to the crocodiles. So that's what I tried to do. I can see in a preview environment before merging this to master, and without doing anything more than a push and a pull request, I can see that my changes are OK. So this helps a lot developers, right? They don't have to create anything special. Everything is automated. Everything is like following these GitOps practices. And I'm getting all these comments in my pull request. So what I can do now, I can say, OK, this pull request looks good. Let's go ahead and merge it, right? Now, something else is going to be triggered by this action of merging things into master. If I go back to Jenkins, branches. Oh, OK, here it is. Because I made a commit into the master branch, this has triggered a new build of the master branch. And what this build is going to do, well, it's waiting for it to start, is going to deploy my master branch to the staging environment, the one I showed you before. And because the staging environment always has all the applications up to date on their master branches. So all this is automated for you. If I show you here, so I can get from the command line, I can get activities. There's a bunch of data that I can get from the command line. All this is being used from pulled from Kubernetes. This is using Kubernetes custom resource definitions to store all this data. And you get all these events being propagated around the Kubernetes cluster. And I can get apps. So I can see the apps that I have running. So the one I have here is telling me that Croc Hunter is on version 33 on staging. And this is the URL. It's in version 32 in production. I deployed this before doing this demo. So I have both running on the staging and production environments. If we go to the production environment, so this is the preview environment. I can close this one now. This is the staging environment that has release 0033. Yes. And this is the production environment that has release 0032. And as a staging is always deployed with the latest version, production you control all the time when you want to promote things. You could also make it automatically, but by default it's manual. So let's see if this has deployed. Still waiting for the run to start. So let me see. Let me go through different things until this builds and deploys. JenkinsX is not just Jenkins. JenkinsX includes a version of Jenkins tailored to Kubernetes. It includes other tools. It includes Monocular. If you are familiar with Kubernetes and Helm charts, so Monocular is a repository for Helm charts. Helm is like the application packaging method of choice for Kubernetes applications. So you have, here is a repository where I have this Croc Hunter application, and it will tell me what different versions I have, 0034, 0033. Helm charts consist of Docker images plus deployment files, configuration files for Kubernetes. And every time JenkinsX does a build, it builds the Docker image inside. It also includes a Docker registry, and it builds the Helm chart, and it deploys it to Monocular. It also includes Nexus for all the dependency management, so you don't have to re-download the internet every time you do a build. Everything is running in your cluster. Helm, the package manager for Kubernetes, so that's what I was mentioning. This, all the projects you create by default are going to be packaged as a Helm chart. And how that happens is it uses both Microsoft Draft and Scaffold to do this building. So whenever you import a new project or you create a new project inside JenkinsX, Draft is going to go and detect what language it is and create all this scaffolding, all the Helm charts, all the Docker file can also be created for you, and different files needed to build both your a Docker image and a Helm chart. So it's using both Draft for this detection of language and creating all the scaffolding, and the Scaffold to do the actual building of the image. Scaffold is a project created by Google, and not only JenkinsX uses it mostly for building the image and building the Helm chart, but you can also use it during development. You can have a synchronized deployment, and every time you make changes locally, a Scaffold can sync and redeploy your application. So it's very cool for things like that. And let's see if this, OK, this is still queued. So let's see what's happened. I'm going to make some mistakes on purpose and see if you are awake. There's going to be others that are not made on purpose, but you wouldn't know which ones. Oh, OK, so it did start. It just didn't refresh. So it's now promoting it to another environment. If I go to the environment again, to the GitHub repository, this is my staging environment. I can see that JenkinsX has created a new pull request in this environment. And it has promoted Croc Hunter to version 0034. So while I was talking, he has gone and changed from 0033, which was my previous master version, to 34, which is my current master version. And it has done it automatically. And every time there's a new PR, there's also a check that this PR can be merged. This is what it's doing. All checks have passed. The pull request has automatically been merged. I haven't done anything, trust me. And my staging environment has been updated to version 34. So if I go here to my staging environment, still 33. It may take some time for it to get actually deployed. I'll show you here. And I can go to my environment build, which is here. Pipelines, environment staging. OK, so it hasn't finished yet. So there was a change in my environment. This is going to validate my environment and deploy the new version that is defining that configuration file, that YAML file. So once this is finished is when the application is going to be updated. And almost there. So all of this is running on Kubernetes. Everything is containers. So if I go and say kubectl, get pods, /watch, I can see, well, there's a lot of things running. I can see Hipster, Monocular, Nexus running. A Maven build was running here. And now a Scaffold was running here. So a bunch of different things. And if I get the namespaces, and JX staging, so if I get the pods in this namespace, you will see that I have this Croc Hunter pod running. So, and if I do the same thing for production, I have a different pod running. So this is all isolated. So by now, this has finished. If I go to my staging environment, and I refresh, it's version 0034, and I have the new version. And this has happened automatically since I merged my PR until the actual deployment to staging. Everything happened automatically. I can go and look in production, and I still have the older version, the 32, and that has not been affected. So every change I made to master, it only affects my staging environment. Now, at some point, I'm going to want to promote things from staging into production without rebuilding them or without doing anything extra. Or just say, I want this version into production, right? So if I go and say JX get apps, this is now updated, and it says version 34 in staging, 34 in staging, 32 in production. And I can say Jenkins X, promote, Croc Hunter, -- version 0034 -env -env production. And it's saying promoting this application version 34 to the namespace production. So yes, I want to use my username. What this is doing is creating a new pull request in my production GitOps environment. I can go and check what that pull request is. So I have two Git repositories, one for staging definitions, one for production definitions. And the production one was changed from version 32 to version 34. And this is all defined in Git. And I can destroy my whole namespace, my whole cluster, and recover what applications and what exact versions I have. If my applications disappear from Kubernetes, I can always recreate everything because everything is defined in a file. I can see who made what changes. I can go back and go forward and do all these sort of cool things. So this pull request is going to, or it has already, it's going through some tests again, and at some point it's going to get automatically merged. And there it is, merged. And this is going to detect the merge. And it's going to promote my application. The same version, no new builds, same package that was deployed into staging, into production. So this is how all these things happen behind the scenes, or how can I start with Jenkins X? And we'll come back to see if my application has been deployed to production successfully. So one thing I can do is JX create quick start. I can also import existing projects, but this is a great way to start. So I have a bunch of templates. And now let's go and say Spring Boot Web. Let's name it something different. Spring Boot Web Java Zone. So this has created a new project for me. It's going to import it into Git. Yes, yes. It's creating a Git repository in GitHub, and it's creating all the scaffolding for me. It's going to execute draft. It's going to execute the scaffold. It's going to build the Docker image, import the project into Jenkins. Jenkins is going to build the Docker image and the Helm chart for this application. And there's a bunch of different templates that you can use, and you can also create new ones. And let's see. Well, this okay. I want to use my organization. I want to use this. Okay, now it's creating the repository. This is all running. I'll show you. This is all running in a cluster in Google Container Engine. Oops, not that one. This one. It has auto-scaling enabled, so I didn't show you before, but it had only one node. Now it has two nodes, so maybe that's why some things were a bit slower than before. It auto-scales whenever I launch more pods and whenever I launch more jobs in Jenkins. the underlying cluster creates more machines. And actually, I could probably see it here. No, not here. And let's see if this has finished. So my project has been created. I can go and check it out. GitHub. So this is a Spring Boot initial project, simple hello world. And if I go and say JX get apps, it hasn't get imported yet because it's probably building right now. This has created a project inside Jenkins. It's getting the first build of master, and this is all set up. And this project is not that I just created from scratch. Is now in the same status that the project I showed you before, where everything is pre-configured for automatic pull request preview environments, automatic staging deployments, and promotion to production, and everything in a GitOps type of operation. And maybe my production environment has updated already. There it is. So I have production now in release 34, and I have the new version running. So it takes a little bit more than I expected, but you can see that how all these things are automated, and how this allows you to have this nice, I keep saying GitOps, hopefully everybody heard about who has heard about GitOps already? Before my talk, okay. So all the configuration is defined as code in Git, and it's traced, and it has version control, and that's a really nice way to define your deployments. Okay, if I go back to, let's see if my new project has been deployed, not yet. Still there. All right, so this is getting promoted now. You can use Visual Studio. There is some integration with IntelliJ and other editors, so you can see what pipelines you have in Jenkins X here, and you can get the builds and get some information without even having to go to Jenkins at all. And that's also what this flow allows you. All the interaction can be done in GitHub pull requests, GitHub issues. You don't even have to go to Jenkins at all. And I'll show you how this all runs on Kubernetes with another examples. Right here, demos. So I can run Selenium the same way it was running in this example in a pod, in a Kubernetes pod, basically a group of containers that share some kernel namespaces. So I defined what pod template to use, and I defined the Kubernetes pod definition. And I say, OK, create a container that has Maven on Firefox. It's going to do a Firefox test from Maven. Another one is going to do a Chrome test from Maven. That's another container. Then another container that's going to be a Selenium hub with two attached Selenium instances. One Selenium Chrome with some environment pre-configured. I'll go into that. And another one is Selenium Firefox. So my build is going to run on 5 containers inside one pod in Kubernetes. One for a Maven Firefox test, one for a Maven Chrome test, one Selenium hub, and 2 Selenium instances, one from Firefox and one from Chrome. So Chrome and Firefox can run in parallel. So this is using Kubernetes to pack all that together. And then all these environment variables is because they share the namespace, the network namespace. You don't want the ports to conflict with each other, so you basically have to say, you listen in port 5556, and you listen on port 5557. That's a way to tweak the Docker images that already exist. And then you say, oh, in parallel, in the container Maven Firefox, run this Maven test and choose the browser Firefox. And in the container Maven Chrome, do the same thing and choose the browser Chrome. And this is going to run all those two things in parallel inside the pod in Kubernetes with auto-scaling enabled and all the Kubernetes goodies. So when I run this, and I ran it before, so you can see better in BlueOcean, you have these two things happening in parallel, and I'm fetching the logs at the end. But the cool thing is that all this happens inside Kubernetes. Another example I have here, well, let's see if my application has been deployed already. The one that I did, OK, the quick start has been deployed. So it's telling me version 1 is deployed here in this staging environment. There's nothing deployed in production. I think it's not up yet. We can check kubectl dash kubernetes. Dash n dx staging. OK, this is running. What is running? OK, so I have the deployment. I have the service. This is the IP. Maybe the firewall, the Nginx hasn't been updated yet. All right, well, we'll check a little bit later. Another thing we are working on, and it's going to be presented next week, we have a Jenkins World and DevOps World Conference. And some of the stuff we've been working, my team and I, is moving towards a more cloud-native Jenkins, and what I like to call serverless Jenkins, for whatever you understand by serverless definition. So what I'm going to run, I'm going to switch clusters. kubectx, I have too many clusters running. This one. And I'm in the... OK, I need to log in. Right, I'm in the JavaZone namespace. I'm going to get what's running in there. All right, I have run this before. So I have a simple Jenkins file that I want to build. Let's say you have a Jenkins file in Git or whatever. You want to build it. You don't have Jenkins running. You don't have anything running on Kubernetes. What I want to do is I'm going to create, from this Jenkins file, I want Kubernetes to run a job that is going to start Jenkins, do the build, and disappear. Right? So I don't have to pay for, if I'm not running any jobs, I have nothing running in my cluster. If I'm running 100 jobs, I have run 100 instances of this running at the same time. And I'll show you with make Kubernetes. So this is uploading the Jenkins file into a Kubernetes config map. So it's basically putting it in there. And this is showing the previous run. Let me get all log logs, logs-f. Oh, let me, okay. I'll just delete everything and start again. Yes, yes. Delete. F down. Okay, so that's good. So it creates a Kubernetes secret with my Git token. It creates a config map with the configuration I want for Jenkins. I can configure different plugins in different ways. I upload my Jenkins file to Kubernetes as a config map, and then I launch a Kubernetes job that basically is going to go and look at the Jenkins file and execute the build in separate Kubernetes pods. So that's what's happening here. Jenkins has started, is creating a new node to do a Maven build, and is going to start another pod to do the actual build, and execute what I have here, which is a very simple Maven package, and then archive the jar file that has been built by Maven. And this is now starting, it's doing the git clone, and you will see this is running on AWS. And I get, in the spirit of serverless or cloud native, I get all the logs from, no, not this one, and it was called, I get all the logs from Kubernetes. There's a lot of logs, but one of them is this one. Yeah, I think so. Well, we'll see the new one immediately. Well, you can see that it has done the Maven build because it has downloaded the internet first, but it's all running in the cloud, so that's all cool. And it has succeeded, and it has uploaded my build to S3. So it uses CloudWatch logs to store the logs. It uses S3 to store the results of the build, and then it has disappeared. So it's just in the pure execute one go, one shot Jenkins build, and then disappear. It should show up here in a second. I think Jenkins file runner, Java song. I can see all the logs here in the CloudWatch format. You see all the downloading stuff from Maven Central, all that is in there. And if I go to S3, this was a previous run that I did at 12:14. If I refresh, that tells me 2:57, which is right now. So this is a way we are working on now, on having this totally automated and having one-shot builds that can scale, that store your data in cloud services, and it's scalable, isolated between different jobs, and all these cool features. So I have 5 minutes left. I lied before when I said I had no more slides. I had another slide. Tak, if you have questions, now you have 5 minutes. Ask me 2 questions, at least 2 questions. Yes. Sorry? If there's a bug in production, how do you roll it back? With the Jenkins X way? Yeah, you can promote any version you want to the different environments. And you can create new environments. So you could have a QA environment or whatever else. And you can always decide. This is all happening with Helm. Let me go back to that cluster. I found today there is a bug in Helm, and its list is going to take 1 minute. but we'll show here. It will tell you exactly what Helm package versions have been deployed to different namespace, and you can. This is totally Kubernetes' standard way of deploying things, and you can promote different versions. So it's just Helm, so it's very easy to switch versions. Another thing is if you have dependencies on databases or things like that, that's a different story. But what it is the actual app, that's very easy. Okay, another question? Yes? No? Okay, well, tack, thank you.